Communications Officer Zethkri pressed 3 of her crystal fingers against the console. The smooth surface lit up with soft blue lights that matched the color of her transparent skin. She had been working the night shift on the monitoring station for 2 full cycles now. Her people, the Vorthans, were good at watching and listening. Their crystal bodies could sense radio waves and energy patterns that other species missed. The station, called Harmony's Watch, floated at the edge of a Kepler 442 system. It was a peaceful place most days. 3 small suns gave off warm light. In the distance, a few planets moved slowly in their paths around the stars. One planet had a mining colony on it. The colony was far from the main trade routes, so not many ships came this way. Zethkri liked the quiet. She could focus on her work without the loud voices and heavy footsteps that other species made. But today, something was different. A red light started blinking on her screen. She touched the light with one finger and listened to the signal that came through her crystal body. "Emergency beacon active," she said to herself. The words came out like tiny bells ringing. "Colony Kepler 442b. All systems failing." She turned her head to look at the signal more closely. The beacon was sending the same message over and over again. Life support was breaking down. The power systems were not working right. 50,000 people lived in that colony. They needed help fast. Zethkri pressed another button on her console. "Admiral Kalinara to communications," she said into the ship's speaking system. Admiral Kalinara walked into the communications room a few minutes later. She was tall and moved with the smooth grace that all Altarians had. Her silver skin reflected the lights from the control panels. Her large black eyes looked at Zethkri with a calm expression that had made her famous across the galaxy. "What do you have for me, officer?" the Admiral asked. Her voice was soft but strong. "Distress signal from the mining colony, Admiral," Zethkri said. She played the message through the room's speakers. The voice that came out was rough and filled with worry. "This is Colony Kepler 442b, calling any ships in range. We have major system failures across all platforms. Life support is failing. Reactor cooling systems are down. We have children here. Please respond. This is not a drill." The message played 3 times. Admiral Kalinara listened without moving. When it finished, she stood quiet for a long moment. Zethkri could see the Admiral's face change. The calm look became something harder. "What species operates that colony?" Admiral Kalinara asked. Zethkri checked her records. She already knew the answer, but she looked anyway. "Humans, Admiral." The Admiral's black eyes became even darker. She walked to the big window that showed the star system spread out before them. The 3rd planet was just a small dot from this distance, but they both knew people were dying there. "Admiral?" Zethkri asked. "Should I send word to the Council fleet?" "We have 12 ships that could reach the colony in 6 hours." Admiral Kalinara turned around. Her face now showed the expression that Zethkri had learned to fear. It was the look the Admiral got when she had to make the hard choices that came with command. "Officer Zethkri, what do you know about the quarantine protocol?" Zethkri felt her crystal body grow cold. Every member of the Galactic Council knew about the new rules. They had been put in place just 2 months ago, after the last incident with the humans. The protocol states that human populations are to be contained within their designated space, Zethkri said. The words felt heavy coming out of her mouth. Council ships are not to provide aid or assistance to human colonies without direct approval from the High Command. "That is correct," Admiral Kalinara said. "And do we have approval from High Command?" "No, Admiral." "Then we follow the protocol." Zethkri stared at her Admiral. "But Admiral, there are 50,000 people on that planet. The message said there are children." Admiral Kalinara walked back to the communications console. She reached past Zethkri and pressed a button. The distress signal stopped playing. The red light on the screen turned gray. The humans made their choice when they refused to follow council law, the Admiral said. They wanted to be independent. They wanted to solve their own problems. Now they can live with that choice. Admiral, I don't understand, Zethkri said. Her voice made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. The quarantine protocol is about keeping humans from leaving their space. This is about saving lives. Admiral. Quelanara looked at the young officer. Zethkri was still new to the service. She had not been there for the meetings where the council leaders talked about the human problem. She had not seen the reports about what humans did to other species during conflicts. Officer, humans are not like us, the Admiral said. They come from a death world. They eat other living things. They fight each other for sport. They solve problems with violence first and questions later. The galaxy is safer when they stay in their own space. But these are just colonists, Zethkri said. Miners and farmers and engineers, who came from the same violent world as their military, Admiral Quelanara said. The protocol exists for good reasons. We will not break it. The Admiral started to leave the room. Zethkri looked at her screen where the gray light blinked slowly. She knew the beacon was still sending its signal out into space. Someone on that planet was still asking for help. Admiral, she said, what if they send ships to help themselves? Admiral Quelanara stopped walking. Their nearest fleet base is 40 light-years away. By the time any human ships could get here, the crisis will be over one way or another. The Admiral left the room. Zethkri sat alone with her console and the gray light that kept blinking. She put her crystal fingers back on the controls and listened to the signal again. The human voice still called out across space, but now no one was supposed to answer. Hours passed. Zethkri watched her screens and did her job. She tracked the ships in their fleet. She monitored space traffic in nearby systems. She checked for any signs of trouble or danger. But the gray light kept blinking, and she kept thinking about 50,000 people who needed help. Then something new appeared on her long-range sensors. At first, it was just a few small contacts at the very edge of her equipment's range. Ships, moving fast through space, too fast for most species. She marked them on her screen and kept watching. More contacts appeared. Then more. In 1 hour, she counted 15 ships. In 2 hours, there were 30. They were all moving toward the Kepler 442 system in a straight line. They moved together like a school of fish or a flock of birds. Too organized to be traders. Too many to be explorers. Zethkri felt her crystal body start to vibrate with worry. She had never seen so many ships moving together, except during the big Council fleet exercises. But these ships were not broadcasting Council identification codes. They were not on any scheduled patrol routes. And they were moving much faster. Then Council regulations allowed Dot. She pressed the button to call Admiral Quelanara again. This time she did not wait for permission to speak. Admiral, we have unknown contacts approaching the system. Multiple ships moving in formation at high speed. Admiral Quelanara's voice came back immediately. How many ships? 37 contacts. Confirmed, Admiral. Possibly more behind them. They will reach the system in less than 4 hours. There was silence on the communication channel. Then Admiral Quelanara's voice came back, harder than before. Battle stations. All ships prepare for possible hostile contact. And Officer Zethkri? Yes, Admiral? Keep monitoring that distress signal. I have a feeling we're about to find out exactly how humans respond when their own people are in danger. Admiral Quelanara stood in her private office looking at the files on her computer screen. The files were marked with red symbols that meant top secret in Council language. She had read these files many times before, but today she needed to. Remember why the quarantine protocol existed. The unknown ships were getting closer to their system, and she had to be ready for anything. The first file was about the Proxima incident. It happened 2 years ago during peace talks between the Council and the Terran Federation. Quilinara remembered watching the news reports. She had been a captain, then not an admiral. The whole galaxy had been shocked by what they saw. The peace. Talks were supposed to be simple. The Council wanted humans to follow the same trade rules as everyone else. Humans wanted to keep some of their independence. Both sides had been talking for 3 months. Everything seemed to be going well. Ambassador Krelthon from the hegemony was leading the Council team. He was a tall, thin being with green skin and no hair. His people were known for being very smart and very peaceful. They had never fought a war in their entire history. Ambassador Krelthon thought all problems could be solved by talking and finding compromise. The human negotiator was a woman named Sarah Martinez. She was small compared to most galactic species, but she spoke with confidence that made everyone listen. For weeks, she had been polite and professional. She smiled at the right times and used the proper diplomatic language. But then Ambassador Krelthon made a mistake. He suggested that humans were too violent to be trusted with their own military. He said that Council peacekeepers should be stationed in human space to make sure humans did not start any wars. He said this would be better for everyone, including the humans themselves. Sarah Martinez stopped smiling. She stood up from her chair and walked around the big conference table. Ambassador Krelthon kept talking, not understanding that something had changed. He talked about how peaceful the galaxy could be if violent species were properly managed. Then Sarah Martinez did something that no one expected. She grabbed Ambassador Krelthon by his diplomatic robes and lifted him off the ground. The ambassador was twice as tall as she was, but humans were much stronger than his people. She held him up in the air and spoke in a voice that was quiet, but very dangerous. "Let me make something clear, Ambassador," she said. "Humans have been protecting themselves for thousands of years. We do not need anyone else to do it for us. And if you think you can force us to accept your peacekeepers, you are welcome to try." She put him down and walked out of the room. The peace talks ended that day. Every species in the galaxy saw the video recording. They saw a human use physical force against a diplomat during official negotiations. Many species had never seen anything like it before. Admiral Quilinara closed the first file and opened the second one. This one was about the Sol incident. It happened 6 months after the failed peace talks. The Council had decided to put an economic blockade around the human home system. They thought this would force humans to accept the peacekeeping deal. A Council fleet of 40 ships surrounded the Sol system. They stopped all trade ships from entering or leaving. The plan was to wait until humans asked for new negotiations. Council leaders thought it would take maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but humans did not ask for negotiations. Instead, they sent out their own fleet. 25 human ships came out to meet the Council blockade. The Council Admiral sent a message telling the humans to return to their planets. The human Admiral sent back a one-word answer: no. What happened next became famous across the galaxy, but not in a good way. Instead of surrendering or retreating, the human ships attacked. They were outnumbered almost 2 to 1, but they fought anyway. The battle lasted 18 hours. Human ships that were damaged kept fighting until they were completely destroyed. When human ships ran out of ammunition, they rammed Council vessels. The worst part was what the human admiral said during the battle. The Council recorded all communications, so everyone heard his words. "This is Admiral Chun of the Terran Defense Force. You came to our home. You threatened our families. You will leave, or you will die here. There is no third option. The Council fleet finally retreated, but they had lost 16 ships. The humans lost 19 ships, but they had saved their home system. More importantly, they had shown the galaxy that they would rather die fighting than surrender to threats. Quelinara rubbed her temples with her silver fingers. The Sol incident had scared many Council species. They began to understand that humans thought about war differently than everyone else. Most species would surrender when they were outnumbered. Humans would fight harder. She opened the third file. This one was the worst of all. It was a study done by Council scientists about human biology and culture. The scientists had wanted to understand why humans were so violent. What they found made the entire galaxy afraid. Humans came from a planet called Earth. The scientists called it a death world because almost everything on it was dangerous. The weather could kill. The animals could kill. Even the plants could kill. Humans had evolved to survive in this deadly environment, and it had changed them in ways that other species found terrifying. First, humans were predators. They hunted and ate other animals. Most galactic species ate plants or artificial food. The idea of killing another living thing for food made them sick. But humans did this every day and thought it was normal. Second, humans fought each other for entertainment. They had sports where people hit each other until one person could not get up. They watched these fights and cheered. Other species could not understand how any intelligent being could enjoy watching violence. Third, humans had something called adrenaline. When humans were in danger, their bodies would make them stronger and faster. Instead of running away from danger like most species, humans would often run toward it. The scientists could not explain why evolution would create such a response. But the worst discovery was about human pack behavior. When humans formed groups, they became more dangerous, not less. They would fight to protect any member of their group, even if it meant death. They would never abandon their wounded. They would never surrender if it meant their families would be hurt. The Council scientists concluded that humans were fundamentally different from all other known species. They recommended that humans be treated as a dangerous species that needed to be contained. Admiral Quelinara closed the files and looked out the window of her office. The unknown ships were now close enough to see on visual sensors. They moved in perfect formation, like a military fleet. Each ship was exactly the same distance from the others. They all moved at exactly the same speed. No other species could coordinate that well during high-speed travel. She knew in her heart that those ships were human. The question was what they wanted. Were they coming to attack the Council fleet? Were they coming to rescue the dying colony? Or were they coming to do both? A message came through her office computer. It was from Communications Officer Zethgri. Admiral, the distress signal from the colony is getting weaker. Their power systems are failing faster now. The unknown fleet will reach the system in 2 hours. Admiral Quelinara looked at the 3 files on her desk. Everything in those files told her that humans were dangerous. They were violent. They could not be trusted. The quarantine protocol existed to protect the galaxy from them, but deep in her mind, a small voice was asking questions. She did not want to answer. If humans were so violent, why had they built a mining colony instead of a military base? If they were so dangerous, why were they calling for help instead of threatening revenge? And if they were so untrustworthy, why was she more afraid of them than they seemed to be of dying? She pushed those questions away and pressed the button to contact her fleet commanders. Whatever happened in the next few hours, she would follow the protocol. She would protect the galaxy from the humans, even if it meant letting 50,000 of them die. But as she gave orders to her ships, Admiral Quelinara could not stop thinking about the one thing the files had never explained. If humans were so evil, why did she feel so bad about letting them suffer? Chief Administrator Elena Vasquez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she crawled through the maintenance tunnel under Reactor Bay 3. The metal walls around her were hot enough to burn skin, but she had to check the cooling lines herself. 2 of her best engineers were already dead from radiation poisoning, and she could not afford to lose anyone else. The colony on Kepler 442b had been her home for 8 years. She had watched it grow from a small mining outpost to a thriving community of 50,000 people. There were schools here now, and parks, and even a small hospital where her daughter had been born 3 years ago. Elena had never imagined that all of it could disappear in just 2 days. The trouble started when the primary fusion reactor began running too hot. At first, the engineers thought it was a simple computer problem. They tried to reset the control systems, but nothing worked. Then the backup reactor started having the same problems. By the time they realized someone had put a virus in their computer networks, it was too late to stop the cascade failure. Elena crawled out of the tunnel and looked at the readings on her portable scanner. The cooling system was down to 30% capacity. If it dropped below 20%, the reactor would melt through its containment chamber. The explosion would kill everyone in the colony and make the planet uninhabitable for the next 1,000 years. "Status report," she said into her communication device. "Reactor 1 is stable for now," came the voice of Engineer Park. He sounded tired and scared. "But we're losing coolant pressure every hour. I don't think we can hold it for more than 12 hours. What about Reactor 2? Reactor 2 is worse. The control rods are stuck halfway up. If we can't get them down in the next 6 hours, that reactor will go critical." Elena closed her eyes and tried to think. She had been sending distress calls for 36 hours now. Her communications officer had contacted every ship within 50 light years. Someone should have answered by now. Even pirates would help. During a reactor emergency, because radiation poisoning killed pirates, just as dead as anyone else. But the only response they had gotten was silence. Elena walked through the colony's main corridor, toward the emergency command center. The corridor was usually busy with people going to work or taking their children to school. Now it was almost empty. Most families were staying in their homes, trying to stay calm while their world slowly died around them. She passed the medical center and saw Dr. Kim working on another radiation victim. The doctor looked up and shook her head. Too many people had been exposed while trying to fix the reactors. The medical center was running out of radiation medicine. In the command center, Communications Officer Torres was still at his station. He had not slept in 2 days. His dark hair was wet with sweat, and his hands shook as he typed on his keyboard. "Any response to our last transmission?" Elena asked. "Nothing," Torres said. His voice was rough from talking into the microphone. "For so many hours. I've tried every emergency frequency. I've sent messages in 12 different languages. I've even tried some of the old pirate codes. Nobody is answering." Elena sat down in her command chair and looked at the big screen that showed the status of their failing systems. Red warning lights covered almost the entire display. Life support was failing in 3 sectors. The water recycling plant was contaminated with radioactive particles. The food storage areas were sealed off because of radiation leaks. "How many people have we evacuated to the outer settlements?" she asked. "About 8,000, said Security Chief Rahman. He was a big man who usually smiled a lot, but Elena had not seen him smile in days. "But the outer settlements don't have life support systems that can handle that many people. And if the reactors explode, even the outer settlements won't be far enough away." Elena looked at the numbers on her screen. 50,000 people lived in the main colony. 8,000 had been moved to temporary shelters. That left 42,000 people who would die if she could not fix the reactors. 42,000 people who trusted her to keep them safe. She picked up the microphone for the emergency broadcast system. This would go out on all frequencies, strong enough to reach any ship within 10 light years. This is Chief Administrator Elena Vasquez of Colony Kepler 442b, she said. We are experiencing total system failure of our fusion reactors. Radiation levels are increasing throughout the colony. We have women and children here. We have families. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We don't need much. Just some coolant for our reactors or transport ships to evacuate. Our people, please don't let us die out here alone. She set down the microphone and waited. The command center was quiet except for the humming of computers and the distant sound of emergency alarms. Meanwhile, on the council monitoring station, Communications Officer Zethkri listened to Elena's broadcast with tears in her crystal eyes. She had been monitoring the human distress calls for hours now, and each message was more desperate than the last. She could hear the fear in Elena's voice, but also the determination. The human woman was not giving up, even when everything seemed hopeless. Zethkri looked around the communications room. She was alone for the moment. Admiral Koalanara was in a meeting with the other ship commanders, planning their response to the approaching fleet. No one was watching the monitoring station. She pressed a button on her console and opened a direct communication channel too. The colony. This was against all regulations. If anyone found out, she could be court-martialed. But she could not just sit and listen while people died. Colony Kepler 442b, this is Harmony's watch monitoring station. She transmitted on a secure frequency. The response came back immediately. Harmony's watch, this is Chief Administrator Vasquez. Thank God someone finally answered. Can you send help? Zethkri felt her crystal body grow warm with shame. Administrator Vasquez, I am not authorized to provide assistance, but I wanted you to know that someone is listening. You are not alone. There was silence on the channel for several seconds. Then Elena's voice came back, softer than before. Thank you for that. Can you tell me why no one is helping us? We've been calling for help for almost 2 days. Zethkri did not know how to answer. How could she explain the quarantine protocol? How could she tell this desperate woman that the council was letting her people die because they were afraid of humans? There are political complications, Zethkri said finally. But Administrator, you should know that there are ships coming toward your system. Many ships. They will arrive in less than 2 hours. Are they council ships? Are they coming to help? Zethkri looked at her sensor display. The unknown fleet was now close enough to see clearly. 37 ships moving, in perfect formation. The energy signatures were like nothing in the council database, but the design patterns matched old intelligence reports about human vessels. I believe they are your people, Administrator, Zethkri said. I believe help is coming. Elena's voice came back immediately, filled with hope for the first time in days. Are you sure? How many ships? 37 confirmed contacts. Large vessels, military configuration. Administrator, if these are human ships, they will reach your planet in approximately 90 minutes. 90 minutes, Elena repeated. We can hold the reactors for 90 minutes. We can do this. Zethkri heard voices in the background as Elena shared the news with her people. For the first time since the crisis began, the humans sounded like they believed they might survive. But Zethkri also heard something else. Admiral Quelinara's voice was coming through the ship's communication system, ordering all crew to battle. Stations. The council fleet was preparing to intercept the human ships before they could reach the planet. Zethkri realized with horror that the humans were not saved yet. They were about to be caught between a dying planet and a council fleet that considered them enemies. She opened the channel to the colony again. Administrator Vasquez, you need to know something else. There is a council fleet in this system. We have been here all along, monitoring your distress calls. The silence on the channel was longer this time. When Elena spoke again, her voice was very quiet and very dangerous. You've been here all along? You've been listening to us call for help, and you did nothing? The quarantine protocol forbids us from providing assistance to human colonies, Zethkri said. The words felt like poison coming out of her mouth. I see, Elena said. And now you're going to stop our rescue ships from reaching us. Zethkri looked at her sensors again. The human fleet was still approaching at high speed. Admiral Quelinara was moving the council ships into an intercept position. In less than 2 hours, there would be a confrontation that could start a war. Administrator, I don't know what will happen when the fleets meet, Zethkri said. But I want you to know that not everyone in the council agrees with these policies. Some of us believe that saving lives is more important than politics. Thank you for telling me the truth, Elena said. And thank you for listening. Even if we die today, at least we won't die thinking that nobody cared. Zethkri closed the channel and sat back in her chair. Through the station's windows, she could see the lights of the council fleet moving into battle formation. Soon they would find out exactly what happened when you stood between humans and their people in danger. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Terran dreadnought Indomitable Will and watched the tactical display with cold, focused eyes. 37 human ships moved through space around her flagship like a pack of hunting wolves. Each ship was painted in the blue and white colors of the Terran Deep Space Rescue Corps, but they all carried enough weapons to fight a small war. Sarah had been commanding rescue operations for 15 years. She had pulled survivors from burning space stations, evacuated colonies from asteroid impacts, and led medical ships through pirate-controlled space to deliver supplies. But she had never been as angry as she was right now. Admiral, we have visual confirmation of the Council fleet, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from the sensor station. 12 ships in defensive formation. Their position between us and the planet. Sarah looked at the main screen. The Council ships were spread out in a line, blocking the direct path to Kepler 442b. Their weapons were not powered up yet, but their shields were active. It was the position a fleet took when they wanted to stop someone without starting a fight right away. Any response to our identification signals? Sarah asked. Negative, Admiral. They're not acknowledging our transmissions. Sarah's jaw tightened. She had been listening to the distress calls from the colony for the past 6 hours, ever since her fleet had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. She knew that people were dying down on that planet, while the Council fleet sat in space and did nothing. Communications. Open a channel to the Council fleet commander. All frequencies. Channel open, Admiral. Sarah stepped forward and spoke. In the calm, professional voice that her officers knew meant she was at her most dangerous. Council fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Deep Space Rescue Corps. We are responding to a humanitarian emergency on Kepler 442b. Please, clear the approach vector so we can begin rescue operations. The response came back in the musical tones of an Altarian voice. Admiral Chun, this is Admiral Quelinara of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You are in violation of the quarantine protocol established by Council Resolution 2847. Human. Vessels are forbidden from operating in this sector. You will withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Sarah looked around her bridge. Her officers were all watching her, waiting to see how she would respond. These were good people who had volunteered to risk their lives saving strangers. They had families back home, but they had come anyway because someone needed help. Admiral Quelinara, Sarah said, her voice getting quieter and more controlled. There are 50,000 civilians on that planet. Their fusion reactors are failing. Children are going to die if we don't get down there in the next hour. Now, I'm going to ask you one more time to get out of our way. Admiral Chun, the humans on that planet made their choice when they rejected Council authority. The consequences of that choice are not the Council's responsibility. Sarah was quiet for several seconds. Around her, the bridge crew could feel the temperature in the room seemed to drop. When she spoke again, her voice was so cold that ice crystals might have formed on the words. Admiral Koilanara, let me make sure I understand you correctly. You have been sitting here listening to distress calls from a dying colony, and you have chosen to do nothing. And now you want to stop the people who are willing to help. Is that an accurate summary? The quarantine protocol exists for the safety of all galactic species. Humans have proven themselves to be dangerous and unpredictable. The Council cannot allow human military vessels to operate freely in Council space. Sarah looked at her tactical. Officer, Commander Park, what's our weapons status? All weapon systems fully charged and ready, Admiral. We have a 3-to-1 advantage in firepower. Sarah nodded slowly. She had hoped it would not come to this, but she had been prepared. For it, every rescue mission carried the risk of running into people who cared more about politics than lives. Admiral Kalanara, I want to be very clear about something. My ships are not here to start a war. We are not here to threaten anyone or conquer anything. We are here to save people who are dying. That is what humans do. We save people, even when those people are not our own species. Even when those people's governments treat us like enemies. Sarah paused and looked directly at the communication screen, as if she could see through space to the Council Admiral's face. But Admiral, let me also be very clear about this. There are 50,000 people on that planet who need help, and I am going to help them. You can either assist us in saving those lives, or you can get out of our way. But if you try to stop us from reaching those people, you will discover exactly why the rest of the galaxy calls us Deathworlders. The communication channel went silent. Sarah turned to her fleet coordination officer. Commander Williams, split the fleet. Send the Aurora, the Defiance, and 15 other ships directly to the planet. Configure for emergency evacuation and reactor stabilization. The remaining ships will stay here with us. Admiral, that leaves us outnumbered by the Council fleet, Commander Park pointed out. Sarah smiled, but it was not a warm smile. Commander, we've been outnumbered before. Remember the Sol incident? 25 human ships against 40 Council vessels. We won that one. Yes, Admiral. But that was a straight fight. This time we have to protect the rescue ships while they work. Then we'll protect them, Sarah said simply. That's what we're here for. On the Council monitoring station, Communications Officer Zeth Kree watched the human fleet divide itself and felt her crystal body vibrate with amazement. Half of the human ships were heading toward the planet, leaving themselves vulnerable to attack. The other half were moving into a defensive screen around the Council fleet, but the defensive screen was not pointed at the Council ships. Instead, the human vessels positioned themselves so that if the Council fleet tried to chase the rescue ships, they would have to go through the human defense line first. It was not an attack formation. It was a protection formation. Admiral Kalanara. Voice came over the ship's communication system. All ships, the humans are dividing their fleet. This is our chance to stop them before they reach the planet. All vessels prepare to pursue the rescue ships. But as the Council ships began to move, something unexpected happened. The human defense ships did not try to stop them. Instead, they matched the Council fleet's movements perfectly. Every time a Council ship tried to go around the human line, a human ship moved to block the path. They were not attacking, but they were making it impossible for the Council fleet to reach the planet without going through them. First, Zeth Kree realized what the humans were doing. They had put themselves between the Council fleet and their own rescue ships. They were willing to fight and die to protect their own people's ability to save strangers. Admiral Kulinara's voice came over the communication system again, but this time it sounded different, less certain. Human vessels, you are interfering with Council operations. Stand down immediately. Admiral Chun's response came back calm and steady. Admiral, we are not interfering with anything. We are simply escorting our rescue ships to a humanitarian emergency. If you have a problem with people saving lives, that says something about you, not about us. Zethkri watched her sensors as the human rescue ships reached the planet and began their work. Medical shuttles launched toward the surface. Engineering ships moved into orbit to beam down emergency equipment. The humans worked with the smooth efficiency of people who had done this many times before. And through it all, the defense ships held their line in space, making sure that nothing could stop the rescue operation. Admiral Kulinara stood on her bridge staring at the tactical display. She had expected the humans to attack or retreat. She had not expected them to calmly divide their forces and dare her to start a fight with people who were trying to save lives. For the first time since the crisis began, Admiral Kulinara began to wonder if the Council's information about humans might be incomplete. These were not the savage warriors from the intelligence reports. These were people who would risk their own lives to save strangers, even strangers whose government considered them enemies. She looked at her weapons officer. One word from her, and the Council fleet would attack. But if she gave that order, she would be firing on ships that were trying to prevent a humanitarian disaster. Admiral Kulinara realized that whatever happened next, the galaxy would remember this day. They would remember that when people were dying, humans came to help. And they would remember what the Council chose to do when humans tried to save those lives. The decision was hers, and the whole galaxy was watching. Admiral Sarah Chun watched the tactical display as her rescue ships reached orbit around Kepler 442b. On the surface of the planet, 50,000 people waited to see if they would live or die. In space above them, two fleets faced each other in a standoff that could change the relationship between humans and the rest of the galaxy forever. Admiral, rescue teams report successful deployment, came the voice of Commander Williams from the Aurora. Engineering teams are beaming down to the reactor facility. Medical teams are setting up emergency treatment centers. We estimate 6 hours to stabilize the reactors and begin full evacuation. Sarah nodded, but kept her eyes on the Council fleet. Admiral Kulinara had not moved her ships for 20 minutes now. The Council vessels hung in space like predators, trying to decide whether to attack. Sarah knew that one wrong move could start a battle that would doom everyone on the planet below. Admiral Chun, came Admiral Kulinara's voice over the communication channel. Your rescue ships are in violation of the quarantine protocol. Order them to withdraw, or we will be forced to take action. Sarah looked around her bridge. Her officers were ready for battle, but she could see the question in their eyes. Were they really going to fight the Council fleet while their own people tried to save lives on the planet? Admiral Kulinara, Sarah replied, I want you to listen to something. She nodded to her communications officer, who opened a channel to the planet's surface. Immediately, the bridge filled with the sounds of the rescue operation. They could hear human voices coordinating the emergency response. Engineers shouting instructions as they worked to repair the failing reactors. Medical personnel calling for more supplies as they treated radiation victims. But they could also hear other voices, the voices of the colonists themselves. Men and women thanking the rescue teams. Parents crying with relief as their children were evacuated to safety. An old man's voice saying over and over, They came for us. They actually came for us. Sarah let the channel stay open for 2 full minutes. Then she closed it and spoke again. Admiral, those are the sounds of people being saved. My crews are down there right now, working in radiation levels that would kill most species in minutes. They are doing this not because these colonists are human, but because they are people who need help. This is what humans do. This is who we are. On the Council monitoring station, Communications Officer Zethkri listened to the rescue operation with tears flowing down her crystal face. She could see on her sensors that the human teams were working in conditions that should have been impossible. The radiation readings around the reactor facility were so high that her own people would have died instantly. But the humans kept working. She opened a secure channel to monitor the rescue team's communications. What she heard amazed her even more. The human teams were not just fixing the reactors. They were also helping with everything else the colony needed. Medical teams were treating injuries that had nothing to do with the radiation crisis. Engineers were repairing water systems and air recyclers. Some teams were even fixing playground equipment in the colony's school. Admiral Quelanara's voice came over the station's communication system. All ships, prepare to move toward the planet. We cannot allow this violation of the protocol to continue. Zethkri made a decision that would probably end her career. She opened a communication channel to Admiral Quelanara's ship. Admiral, this is Communications Officer Zethkri. I need to report something important. What is it, officer? Admiral, I have been monitoring the human rescue operation. They are not just helping their own people. They are providing medical aid to non-human colonists as well. There are 17 different species living in that colony, and the humans are treating all of them. There was silence on the channel for several seconds. Then Admiral Quelanara's voice came back, quieter than before. Are you certain of this? Yes, Admiral. I have recordings of their medical teams treating Altarian children for radiation exposure. They have engineering teams fixing life support systems for Vorthan families. They are saving everyone, not just humans. On the planet's surface, Chief Administrator Elena Vasquez stood in the main reactor control room and watched the human engineering team's work. She had never seen anything like it. The team leader, a woman named Captain Rodriguez, had walked into a radiation field that should have killed her in seconds. But her protective suit was so advanced that she could work safely for hours. Reactor 1 is stable, Captain Rodriguez reported. We've got the cooling system back online, and the control rods are responding properly. Reactor 2 will take longer, but we can fix it. Elena looked at the readings on her control panel. For the first time in 3 days, all the warning lights were green. Her colony was going to survive. Captain, I don't know how to thank you, Elena said. You risked your lives to save people you don't even know. Captain Rodriguez paused in her work and looked at Elena through the faceplate of her radiation suit. Administrator, there are 50,000 people here. That's 50,000 reasons to risk our lives. We don't need to know you personally to know that you're worth saving. Outside the reactor facility, human medical teams had set up emergency hospitals in the colony's main plaza. Dr. Sarakim worked alongside alien doctors to treat radiation victims from 17 different species. She had never treated some of these species before, but the human medical database contained information about the biology of every known intelligent race. The Vorthan children need a different type of radiation medicine, Dr. Kim explained to her team. Their crystal biology processes radiation differently than organic species. We need to adjust the treatment. A young Altarian mother brought her sick child to the medical station. She was afraid of the humans at first, but Dr. Kim smiled and spoke gently in the Altarian language. Within minutes, the child was receiving treatment, and the mother was crying with gratitude. In space above the planet, Admiral Quelanara stood on her bridge and watched the rescue operation continue. Her tactical officer had been giving her regular reports, but each report made her more confused about what she was seeing. Admiral, the human ships are not behaving like a military fleet, the tactical officer reported. "They are sharing their sensor data with us. They are coordinating their flight paths to avoid interfering with our operations. They are even offering to provide medical supplies if we need them." Admiral Kellinara stared at the tactical display. Everything she had been taught about humans said they were dangerous and unpredictable. But these humans were being more professional and courteous than most council fleets she had worked with. "Admiral," came another voice from the communication station. "We're receiving a transmission from the human flagship. Admiral Chun is requesting permission to speak with you privately." "Put her through." Admiral Chun's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired, but her eyes were calm and focused. "Admiral Koalanara, my rescue teams will be finished in about 4 hours. After that, we will withdraw from the system as requested. But before we leave, I want to ask you something." "What is your question? Why are you afraid of us?" "Admiral." Koalanara was surprised by the directness of the question. "Admiral Chun, humans have proven themselves to be violent and unpredictable. The incidents at Proxima and Sol clearly demonstrate." "Admiral," Sarah interrupted gently, "let me tell you what really happened at those incidents. At Proxima, your diplomat suggested that humans needed to be controlled by other species because we were too dangerous to govern ourselves. My colleague reacted badly to being told that her entire species was unfit for independence. At Sol, your fleet blockaded our home system and threatened our families. We defended ourselves." Admiral Koalanara was quiet for a moment, but the report said that humans were naturally aggressive. "Admiral, we are aggressive when people we care about are in danger. We fight when we have to. But look at what we're doing right now. We could have attacked your fleet and forced you to let us pass. Instead, we positioned ourselves defensively and focused on saving lives. Does that seem like the behavior of a species that solves everything with violence?" Admiral Koalanara looked at her tactical display again. The human defense ships had not moved from their protective formation in hours. They had not powered up weapons or charged shields. They had simply made it clear that anyone who wanted to stop the rescue operation would have to go through them first. "Admiral Chun," she said slowly, "what would have happened if I had ordered my fleet to attack?" Sarah's expression became very serious. "We would have fought you, Admiral. And we would have won because we were fighting to save lives, and you would have been fighting to let people die. There is a difference in motivation that matters in combat. But you would have risked starting a war. Admiral, there are some things more important than avoiding conflict. Saving innocent lives is one of them. We learned a long time ago that sometimes the only way to protect people is to be willing to fight for them." Admiral Koalanara realized that she had been looking at humans completely wrong. They were not violent because they enjoyed violence. They were willing to be violent because they cared about protecting others. There was a fundamental difference that the Council had never understood.